Okay. Hello, hello. Happy Friday night or Saturday day, wherever you are in the world. Um, and I am so excited today to talk about purpose, passion, and living your potential. Hi, Randy. Um, so this is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart because I feel like so many people out there have been getting this message that we're supposed to be living our purpose. We're supposed to be living our potential. That we all have this this special thing that is what we are here to do, and when we are doing that thing, we're going to feel amazing. We're going to always feel aligned. We're going to always feel on fire. We're going to feel passionate. We're going to feel like we're living our potential and we're giving to the world that one special thing that we have. And it's supposed to be this spectacular, obvious, um, like I can say, look, this is me, this is my purpose, I'm living it, and like I say, right, I feel aligned, I feel connected, I feel like I'm on fire all the time, and I'm like being myself, and I'm giving to the world that thing that's from me. And that is all lovely, and that is all a beautiful sentiment. And I think that to a degree that is true. That there is a level of um, feeling like you are living in alignment with yourself and feeling like there's purpose and meaning behind what you're doing in your day when you kind of have found yourself to a degree. But at the same time, I think the very first thing we need to understand about living a life of purpose, living a life of passion, living a life of living up to our potential, is that in our world, the first thing that has made this so hard for people to find, especially for people in their teens and their 20s and even into their early 30s, is that society has, like, number one, sort of made it out to be that two things, two major things. One, that your purpose is supposed to look like a job. It's supposed to fit into some sort of career. It's supposed to be some way that you're making money, that you're contributing to society, contributing to the economy, and that you know you're living your purpose when the thing you do for money is like your deepest passion. And I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that I don't think that is true for all people. Okay? The idea that what I do to make a living, the idea that what I do to support myself, what I do to put food on the table and a roof over my head, has to be coming from the depths of my soul. And if it isn't, I'm failing in some way. I think we really need to look at that belief and understand that that is not necessarily going to be true for every single human on the planet. And that's a very contracted view of what it can look like to live your purpose. Okay, so that's the first thing. Living your purpose does not necessarily mean that what you do to support yourself financially is coming from the depths of your soul and is the most on fire thing you can think of doing in and of itself. Okay, and we're going to talk about that more as we go along, but I just want to get that idea going, right? We are all being told that if you're living your purpose, that thing you do for money is something you would do for free, that you love what you do so much because it's coming from the depths of your being. And that is how you know you're living your life of purpose. And then the second thing is this idea that living a life of purpose means that we always feel aligned, we always feel sure of what we should be doing, we always feel um, like we know who we are, and we know what we're doing, and we know what we're giving, and we feel passion, and we feel energy, and we feel clarity all the time. Okay, and then the last thing is that living a life of purpose is something that we come to and then we land on and then we do it forever, right? That there's this other idea of consistency, that if we're really living a life of purpose, if we're living our life of passion, if we're living our life that is in alignment, we find the thing and then we do that thing forever. And it's this definable, boxable, we can put a label on it. I am a spiritual coach. And that's my highest excitement every single day, and I'm always on fire about it, and I'm never lacking inspiration, and the rest of my life is just great and awesome because that's what it is, and I'm living my life of purpose. Okay, and what we need to understand is like, okay, number one, that's an immense amount of pressure to put on a person. That you need to be feeling on fire and clear and completely connected to yourself and what you want to do and what you want to offer, and that has to be offering something to the world, and it has to be definable and boxable and making you money. Like, is there any reason, is there any, like, can we see why we might all feel so freaking stressed out about this purpose and passion and potential thing, right? And even on top of that, there are a lot of us who have believed and believe that if we're living our life of purpose and we're living our life of passion, it's going to make all of our pain go away, right? That when we're finally living our life of purpose, when we're finally living up to our potential, when we're finally living our passion, we're going to feel worthy. We're going to feel lovable. We're going to feel like we're doing the right thing all the time. We're going to feel like we're in the right place. We're going to feel aligned, like I said. We're going to feel loved. And I think a lot of us have idealized a purposeful, a passion-driven, a potential-driven life as synonymous with a life that doesn't hurt anymore. A life where we're no longer confused anymore. A life where we're no longer struggling anymore. A life where we're constantly able to understand and feel good about what we're doing. And I just really want to say, right, that all of this makes sense because of the cultural conditioning we've been handed. And I believe that this conditioning started back in the 1940s, okay? So there's a documentary that I highly recommend that everybody watch, and it was done by the BBC, and it's called Century of the Self. And if you're watching this on Instagram, if you're watching this on YouTube, if you're watching this on Facebook, it doesn't matter, I have put a link to that documentary in the description. So when I post this to my IGTV, the link will be there. When I post this to YouTube, the link will be in the description. And on Facebook, you'll see the link in the description. So Century of the Self. And it's essentially a documentary about what happened in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, when essentially in the United States and in Europe, we had gotten to a place where financial abundance was more or less common. Okay, more and more people had gotten to a place where they could afford a fridge and a house and nice clothes and kind of a more luxurious lifestyle, in the sense that, like, people weren't scraping by to make ends meet anymore, and they could afford luxury items and we were out of the idea that most people were living below the poverty line, and a much larger portion of the population had their needs met and then some. Okay? And this is something, obviously, humanity had been working towards forever. We all, right, with the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, humanity had been struggling for all of humanity to figure out how to survive in this world, in a way where we could kind of get ourselves out of the food chain, and then get ourselves out of poverty, get ourselves out of, and like this was all going on too with the medical revolution and science and all of these things that really took us out of being completely susceptible to infectious disease that like would wipe everyone out. People were less and less like farmers and working the land, and more in jobs in cities. Like I said, having houses, having clothes, having all fridges, um, and and that was like a massive shift for humanity to go from we're still victim to pretty much every disease that's going to go around because we don't have modern medicine, we don't have sanitation, we don't have all these things, to most people still are working for their grain, for their cows. Like we're still kind of connected to the land, working the land, because this spread of opulence, or at least, sustenance, wasn't common yet. And then it, like I say, it shifted into this idea that like kids can start going to school because they don't have to work the fields, because dad has a factory job now, and there's mass production, and there's medicine, and there's sanitation, and all of these things were happening that like really took us out of the food chain. And distribution of resources was happening, and all of these things. So because of this, people were really like, this is it. This is what humanity has been working for forever. We have been working towards getting ourselves to a place where we're no longer victim to the way that the world is, right? To nature, to all of these things. And we had devised systems where more and more people could be getting their needs met and then some. Okay? And rather than what we all thought was going to happen, we all are like, this is amazing, everything's awesome, life is everything, parties. So that's kind of what happened in the 1920s, right? The roaring 20s, everyone had stuff, and we were like, holy shit, life is amazing, let's just party. So that was happening. Then World War II happened, and then kind of after the war, again, things started to come back to normal. I mean, World War I also really stimulated the economy, and people had jobs, and all these things were going on. Anyways, the point being, we get to this place where we are, generally speaking, out of the food chain, have our needs met, and then some. And rather than being excited and happy and blissful, people started to have existential crises, is basically what happened. People started to feel like all of this emotion they had never felt before. They started to feel like, what's my purpose? What's my identity? Who am I? What is the meaning of all of this? Okay, so like literally humanity as a whole in the Western world where this was taking place started to, like I say, have an existential crisis, because we were breaking through that growth barrier of just working to have enough, working to survive, working to keep our family going, to life isn't about that anymore, because we kind of have systems. We have opulence, we have resources, we have distribution of resources, that we're not fighting for survival anymore. And just having nice things and going to parties and all of this stuff isn't fulfilling. I'm starting to have emotional awareness. I'm starting to feel unfulfilled in what I'm doing. I'm starting to feel like there's more to me, and I don't know where that is or what that is, because up until now, a successful human was one who could survive, one who could have resources. And now we kind of all have that. And so what's the point of me? So this is what started to happen. And Freudian psychology and the economy that had been built up until then all goods had been sold under the basically before that, marketing was all about convincing people that the thing that you're selling is indestructible, is going to last you forever, is of high quality, is a thing you need, and this is the best version of the thing you need. Right? These pants are going to last forever. These shoes are going to last forever. These are the best, most indestructible washing machines on the market. This car, you'll never have to replace it. Right? This was how things were sold. But then as we started to get more and more money and more finances and more resources, like I said, we started to have this like existential crisis, like who am I? What's the point of me? What's my identity? What makes me different from everyone around me who has all the same stuff? This is what we kind of have to, this is what was happening. And so what they started to do, what Freudian psychology led us to, was, okay, we need to get rid of this. This is crazy. Everyone's depressed. Everyone's anxious. This isn't healthy. We don't know what to do with this. We don't know what to do with all these suppressed emotions. We don't know what to do with all of this identity crisis. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to invent terms, depression and anxiety. We're going to label these things as bad. We're going to start to invent medication to try to make these things go away. And we are going to start to use what people want. Identity, connection, purpose, meaning. And we're going to sell them products under the guise that these things can satisfy these needs. So all of a sudden it started to become about how this dress makes you look, what this car says about you, what this job means about who you are, what you contribute to the economy in the sense of what you buy and what you do for a living. That's your identity. That's the meaning of you. That's your truth. You see what I'm saying? So basically they said, look, we are not going to readjust how society works, because this system is working for us here at the top. Us factory owners, us brand owners, us people who are already even more wealthy than the wealthy. We don't want people checking out of the system, right? We need people to still be consumers. And what they're wanting now is not durability and things that are going to last and things they can depend upon. What they want now is purpose and identity and meaning. So we need to keep this system going. And what we're going to do is we're going to tell them, well, you can buy that. We can sell that to you. Right? So cigarettes, you'll watch in the documentary, became torches of freedom that represent who I am as a woman who's free. I have the freedom to smoke my lady cigarette. That's different than the man cigarette. And this says that I'm risky and I'm different and I'm all of these things. And so do my clothes. And so does my car. And so does the house that I live in and the job that I choose to do. These things all say something about me. Okay? So like I said, rather than us reaching that growth point and saying, okay, there's more to being human than just what we contribute to the economy. There's more to being human than just getting our basic needs met and maybe having some luxury. We are now looking for purpose, meaning who am I as an individual? Who am I as a being? What do I have to contribute? All of these things. And we didn't take that growth step. That's basically what happened. We have been trying to fit this existential crisis into the old model that worked for a while, right? Because that old model of everything we do is for getting ourselves out of the food chain, getting ourselves to a point where we have our basic needs met. That was a phase we had to go through. The Industrial Revolution, all of these things where we could distribute goods and resources, where we learned how to, grow food more effectively, all of these things, sanitation. I'm not saying these things were bad. We needed these things. But then, like I said, when we got there, we had this growth barrier in our consciousness where we were meant to go to the next step. And we are still struggling to go to that next step. That's where we're at right now. All of us, especially many, many, many of us who have our basic needs met. We were born into a world where we had our basic needs met. We had a roof over our head, we had food on the table, we got to go to school, we kind of had the basics. We're in our 20s, in our 30s, in our teens, we're having this existential crisis because that's the hierarchy of needs. We were just already at physical needs met. So the next thing is identity. The next thing is purpose. The next thing is what's the point? And so many of us, especially in my generation or whatever, we're being labeled as anxious and depressed in our teens and in our 20s because we're looking out at the world and we don't feel how our parents felt. We don't feel how our grandparents felt. And this is also something to say too, that we are also seeing the older generations, our parents and our grandparents, also reaching this existential crisis in their 50s, in their 60s, because they're getting there too. You see, it used to be a midlife crisis. One generation ago, people would work and do all these things and they were totally in their career and having kids and doing that, generally speaking. And they wouldn't hit the well, what's the point of me? Until their 50s. When they had their retirement savings. They had worked their whole lives. They're safe. They're secure now. And now it hits them. Whoa, geez. Who am I? What am I? That comes up because they reach that level of safety. And then it's happening even sooner in the generation next after them, their kids, us. We had this existential crisis at 20, at 15, right? Because we had those basic needs met. And then now we're having kids who are 5, who are 10, being diagnosed with anxiety and depression. Because they're having their existential crisis immediately. Because there was no point in their life where there wasn't, right? Because we're having parents who are parenting in a loving way, who are parenting in a way that make their children feel safe and secure. So they are not worried about not having their needs met, generally. And so they're aware of the purpose and the meaning and what's the point of this. Like we're having all these kids and we're like, wow, they're just like amazing kids. It's like, well, yeah, we're parenting them in a way that they don't feel threatened. And so they're reaching that higher level of hierarchy of needs sooner. So you see that this is just a normal part of human development. And the more we try to stuff it into the box of the economy, that purpose, passion, and potential has to look like a job that makes you money, has to look like this cohesive, this is what you are. So we can put a label on you. We can put a box on you. We know how to sell to you. We know where you fit in the pecking order of life. The more we're trying to say that's what purpose and passion and potential is, the crazier we're becoming. Because we are human beings. And we are multifaceted. And we are complex. And we are creative. And we are meant to be always changing, learning, growing, evolving, and expanding. The old economy, the old way of life, of I'm just going to get my job, I'm going to work that job for 50 years, I'm going to get my retirement, and that's what a good life is, isn't reality anymore. Number one, the world has changed too much. Whether or not we want to admit it, the world has changed. The world is changing. Things are happening so that the old system can't keep functioning because, and again, I know humans have a really hard time with this, but we have to understand that the one constant of life, the one constant of life, the singular thing that we can depend on, that this is always how life is going to be, is that life is always going to change. So our economy, our worldview, our systems that are built upon, find your thing, and then you'll have that thing, and you'll never have to do another search again. You're gonna arrive, okay? Just this foundational principle. There is somewhere to get where you will get there, and you will know that you've gotten there, and then you're there now. The heaven syndrome, right? It's in all of religions. You're going to suffer, you're going to do whatever you're going to do, and then you're going to get your reward in heaven, and then it's just bliss for eternity. We have a secular version of that. It's called, you're going to find your perfect job, find your perfect mate, you're going to have your house, and then you're just going to do that to the day you die and be happily ever after. You're going to figure out your identity, figure out who you are. You're going to find the right clothes that represent you. You're going to find the right house that represents you. You're going to have all these friends that are completely your tribe. And then you're just going to feel amazing for the rest of your life. Sound familiar? Right? You'll become a good person. You'll do the right things. You'll suffer. And then you'll be rewarded with heaven. It's not different. We've been telling ourselves this story forever. I'm suffering now, but don't worry. Because if I just do the right things, so if I'm just a part of the right religion, I'll get my heaven. If I just keep doing this and find the right job, find the right career, find the right partner, get the right body, find the right location, get enough money, I'll be happy forever. This is what we all are chasing. It's not different from religion. It's just a secular version of the same story. And this is part of the reason we all feel like such absolute garbage. Because that foundational way of trying to live is out of alignment with reality. So, real reality is we are always going to be changing. Everything we discover about ourselves is going to be the foundation for the next thing we're going to grow into. Because this, again, is the one characteristic of life. The one characteristic of life that all of life shares is it must be growing. In order to be considered life, you have to be in a state of growth. You have to have the capacity to grow. You have to be essentially in a state of evolution on some level. Learning new information, taking that new information in, having new experiences. Those new experiences are informing your being and causing you to have micro changes or massive changes in your life. And the amazing thing is that growth is not even something we have to pursue. It's built in. Every single day you wake up, even if you do the exact same thing every single day, it's a new experience. because nothing is ever exactly the same as it was last time. So we are constantly being exposed to the fodder for growth, which is new information. And remember, real information. We get information through talking, yes, and through learning and books and all these things. But the way we actually learn is experientially. We learn by interacting with reality. This is why anytime anyone comes to me and says, I learned this from you, I will say, no, no, no. You learned what you learned from reality. And maybe I helped you to contextualize it, verbalize it, explain it in a logical, linear way that your mind could understand. But if you really know something, you know it because you experienced it. You know it because you went through it. And I either just explained it for you and gave it context, or I sparked something in you that you then went out and had an experience and learned from that experience. Every teacher doesn't teach their student anything. Reality is the teacher. So that's built in. Us learning and growing and being exposed to that which we need to learn and grow is constant. Because you are alive, it's there. We don't have to pursue that. Rather, if we really want to live a life of purpose, of passion, of potential, the first thing we have to let go of is the idea that we're going to arrive anywhere. Because we're never going to arrive. We need to start to embrace the fact that we are always going to be learning something new. We are always going to be expanding into something different. We are not ever going to figure out who we are and then that's it. Right? So of course, we all have specificity. We all have these seeds of us that these are the basic foundational building blocks of who we are, right? Like our basic nature. We can say that exists. Yeah, we all have a basic nature. We have things that we're just naturally interested in, things we're naturally not interested in, things we're naturally inclined towards, things we're not naturally inclined towards. We're not infinite beings in these human bodies. We're not. We're finite. We have limits. And I know that people really don't like the idea of that, but it's reality, right? I am never going to be a 6'9" African American basketball player. There's a limit. I am never going to be Beyonce. There's a limit. I can't just choose to be my grandpa, who was born in the early 1900s. That's never going to happen. I'm never going to have that experience. There are limits to who I am and what I am. And we first need to embrace that. We have limits. We are finite. We are not everything and anything, and that is okay. We kind of just have to accept that. And the second thing is that what we are, we're not going to change that. We're not going to change the fundamental blueprint of who we are. So this is where we start to say, like, when we start to feel alignment or misalignment and how that alignment can be different for all of us. It is going to be different for all of us because we all have a different fundamental blueprint. And so what is in alignment for me to be doing is not necessarily going to be the thing that's in alignment for everyone else to be doing. We have relative alignment and we have universal alignment, right? So we have those universal concepts. Everyone who lives outside of the idea that we are all one and all connected feels pain. That's a universal principle that every single person who lives outside of that is going to suffer. Okay? That's universal alignment misalignment. But relative alignment misalignment, for me, living in Asia, is in alignment. I feel pain when I go to the Western world. Does that mean every single person on the planet should move here because it's alignment for me? Of course not. Because that's relative alignment. That's me relatively living my purpose. But that doesn't mean that it's everyone's purpose. Of course not. We all have different internal, where we are on our journey, where we are on our path, what matters to us, what is meaningful and purposeful to us. Okay. And then that being something that's always going to change. So I really want to emphasize this, that when we're living a life of alignment, it doesn't mean we're not suffering. It doesn't mean we're in bliss. It doesn't mean we feel on top of the world. So much of the time, living a life of purpose, living a life of meaning, being in alignment, is to be in pain. Because that's how we're learning. Or we were literally raised in such a situation where we were so out of alignment with reality that climbing our way out is like paying back debt. So for me, I was born into a body that was really, really, really sick, into a household that was really emotionally unhealthy, that like literally I don't know that my conditioning, the household I was born into, could have been any more antagonistic to my true authentic self. So let's put it that way. Me, who I am fundamentally, and the life that works for me, and that's going to continue to work for me, and the lifestyle, right? Like the general kind of okay, because I'm going to say this, right? We never arrive, but like I say, we all have this fundamental blueprint. So there's going to be themes that we can arrive at. Yeah, there's going to be like a general, yes, okay. This is like these are loosely and broadly the things that work for me. So there is going to be some arriving. But within that, the details and the specificity and the actual expression are all going to evolve and change over time. Okay, so my specific nature being incredibly philosophical, incredibly person-based. I want contact. I want to talk. I want to communicate. Needing to live in nature where it's hot. So that just being a thing, I don't know. I don't judge myself anymore for what my alignment is. It's just going with it. Needing, like really, open lines of communication. Needing that contact. Needing verbal processing. Needing creativity. Needing less structure and routine. I am a person who really thrives off novelty and things being different and new experiences, almost for the sake of new experiences. So these are the things that I have found out to be true to my authentic nature, and part of what it looks like for me to be living my purpose is to be living all of those things. And the house I was born into was about alone time, everybody to their corner, getting everything done as fast as possible, streamline life, make it all the same routine every single day, and then just go to bed. And living in Alberta, where it's cold all the time, and no connection, and just this expectation of being alone all the time, this expectation of fitting into a routine, being quiet. There was a lot that was just so counter to my true nature. That as I started to become an adult and change my life, trying to follow what felt good for me, two things. First thing, I was taking steps towards alignment. Things were getting better. But that didn't mean that they felt good. Yeah? Right? If we're $1 million in debt and we put $1,000 in, do we have $1,000 in the bank now? No. We are now in debt, 1 million minus 1,000. You see what I'm saying? We're now in debt $999,000. So is that going to feel good? No, we're just less in debt. And I feel like a lot of us need to kind of consider that if we're in deep pain and trauma and our conditioning and the world that we were born into feels really shitty to us, right? And we're really anxious and we're really depressed and we don't know who we are and we don't know what we're doing and we're trying to fit ourselves in these boxes and we're trying to do all this stuff and it's not working. That's not our fault. We were all born into a world where we're not being supported in being the human beings that most of us actually are. Right? Parents are getting far more aware these days and looking to really like understand who their children are and what human beings need to thrive. But for most of us watching this, we weren't raised like that. We were raised by parents who said, well, this is how it is, just do this. And this could have been the most loving, compassionate, heart-centered thing from our parents. Right? This doesn't mean that our parents were nefarious in any way. This was their understanding, that you need to survive, you need to make money, this is how the world works, so you need to be this. For most of us, that was really the intention. They weren't trying to hurt us, right? And so, but it did. And so sometimes living a life of alignment means taking steps that take you in the right direction, but don't necessarily lead you to feeling blissful. They feel better. Yeah, so I took a lot of steps from Calgary to Edmonton to Vancouver to Thailand, back to Montreal to San Francisco, like from working in a yoga studio, going to school at night, having to run around like a chicken with my head cut off, to make ends meet, to be independent while also trying to move forward in my career, and then blogging on the side, and then because that felt good, but working a normal job to pay the bills that wasn't my passion, and then moving slowly more and more and more towards, can I make my passion a way that makes money? But even that, I very much said to myself, I'm very passionate about sharing this message that I'm sharing, but I'm not going to ever make it a thing that has to make me money. Because I don't want to have to compromise on my values. Ever. So this is really what it comes down to. Okay, so that thing first. Second thing is when we're starting to move against our conditioning to live a life that actually aligns for us, so much of the time it's going to actually feel worse than the life we were living before. Because the life we were living before is programmed into our nervous systems as being how we are surviving. And to change that is to have our bodies and our minds react like we're going to die. So to a lot of us, depending on how much your conditioning is contrary to your true authentic self, you're going to feel like shit living your conditioning because your authentic self is dying. And you're going to feel like shit for a little while living your authentic self because your conditioned self thinks you're going to die. So this is a huge thing that I think people do not understand, is that really stepping into our authenticity for a lot of us, for most of us, is a trauma healing experience where we're going to feel like we're going to die. We're going to feel like living my true purpose is the scariest, most threatening thing I can do. Even if your mind knows you're not about to die, everything's fine, your body is going to be reacting like, if I do this, I'm going to die. And you're going to make up all these stories that everyone's going to hate me and everyone's going to reject me. And if that happens, I'm not going to have money, I'm going to be homeless on the street and all these things. And it's going to make perfect sense to you. And so we feel like we're trapped in between these two things. Of like, I know I don't want to live this and I know this isn't right for me and it makes me have to cope. And I have all these things that I do to cope with this life that is clearly not in alignment for me. But trying to pursue what is in alignment for me just feels exhausting and terrible and hard because I feel like I'm going to die when I do it. And I feel so scared. And so we kind of have to remember that too, that stepping into our true potential, depending on how traumatized we are, is going to not feel good. Right? And that's something we really have to understand. And then as we do this, what really, to me, living a life of purpose, passion, and potential boils down to is not a job, is not a title, is not a box we fit in. Okay? Living a life of purpose, passion, and potential comes down to really getting to know ourselves and what we value. This is how we live a life that feels purposeful and meaningful all the time. When we understand what we value as a human being, what actually really matters to us, what our priorities are as a human, that, okay, because here's the other thing, right? There are so many infinite possibilities of things that we could do in this world. For most of us, a lot of the time when we feel like we should be doing something else, should be somewhere else, should be something else, it's because there's such infinite potential for what we could do with what we are and who we are. And just in general in the world. And we have no way of organizing the things we actually want to pursue with our finite resources and our finite time and our finite sense of self. Because we don't have a guiding principle. We don't have a guiding, okay, we need to understand that we can't do and be everything. That there are going to be expectations that society places on us, that our parents place on us, that we place on ourselves or whatever, that we're never going to be able to live up to. Because there simply isn't enough time in a lifetime for us to do all of the things that we have in front of us. So for instance, when we start to discover what we truly value, this helps us get rid of that overwhelm of I should always be doing something. There's always something else I could be doing, because that is true. There is always something else you could be doing. There is always something else you could be pursuing. There is always another option of growth you could be going down. So how do you choose what to do? You know your values. Because life is this complex series of choices where we say yes to something, and in saying yes to something, we say no to a whole bunch of other things. And if we don't know why we're saying yes to this thing and no to this thing and yes to this thing and no to this thing and how to prioritize things, we're always going to feel like we should be somewhere else doing something else. So this coming into our sense of self, where we say, okay, it's not about figuring out what job it is right now. It's not about what matters to me. When I get to the end of my life, what do I want to look back on and say, this is what I prioritized, and I'm proud that I prioritized that. So for some people, that's family. Their family and their relationships with their family. So their family of origin, their significant other, their children possibly, that is the foundational thing. That I want to live my priority is these relationships I made with my family. So if that, then you can kind of say, okay, this is generally speaking what feels in alignment for me. To live a life where I'm prioritizing, generally speaking, my relationships. That can then help you with all of your actions, all of the decisions you have to make every single day. You can start to say, okay, how does this fit into the box, right? The general theme of what matters to me, which is relationships. So I have the choice tonight to stay at the office and work a little bit longer, and maybe I'll get a promotion, or go hang out with my spouse. And I know that that's going to mean a lot to them. What do I choose? I'm going to choose the spouse because my highest priority is my family and my relationships and that connection. And so I'm going to prioritize that over other things when the choice comes. And I'm going to feel purpose in that. I'm going to infuse that with purpose and meaning because I'm coming at it from I'm doing this because it matters to me. When I cook food and I nourish my body, I'm doing it in a way that is infused with this purpose, right? So I'm nourishing my body because I want to be here and I want to be healthy for my family. I want to cook for my family. I want to make food with each other. Do you see what I'm saying here? When we start to understand that living a life of purpose is not about what it looks like on the outside. Living a life of purpose is about understanding what your core values are and then infusing everything you do with purpose. You bring purpose to what you do. Purpose, passion, and potential are going to come down to, am I living a life where I am prioritizing what matters to me? That is what is going to feel good. And again, that is going to require a lot of deprogramming, deconditioning, because a lot of us have been told we have to prioritize our careers. We have to prioritize looking good. We have to prioritize social status. And most of us, I think, if we all go inside and really connect with what feels purposeful and meaningful to me, we're not going to come up with that. We don't actually want to do that. We want to do that because it's going to give us approval and love and acceptance from the outside, because we don't know how to validate ourselves, and we don't know how to love ourselves, and we don't know how to nourish ourselves. But if we can feel like, okay, if I were to be loved no matter what, if I was going to be accepted no matter what actually matters to me? Most of us aren't going to be like my social status, how many followers I have. But then how much time of the day are you spending prioritizing that? And there we can feel like we're not living our life of purpose, because we're prioritizing things that we're being told we should prioritize that don't actually feel meaningful to us because of our conditioning. And then the things that do feel meaningful to us might be so buried we don't even know what they are. Might have such negative association with being rejected by our caregivers in society that we are afraid to even look at them. It doesn't actually even feel good to prioritize what feels good to us, because it feels like threat and death. So this is why this inner child work, this personal growth work, this healing work that I'm doing in the mystery school, that's on all my YouTube videos, everything I talk about finding your way through your conditioning, through your perception of this is who and what I have to be, this is what matters in the world, because this is what I was told matters, into, no, what actually matters to me. If I can love myself safe, if I can feel safe inside myself, I can get my needs met. The whole world can reject me and I can still survive. We can start to get past our survivalist fears. That's when we're going to start to discover, okay, what actually matters to me. And then when we know that, we know how to prioritize our lives. And then we are going to bring that feeling of purpose and passion to everything we do, which is constantly going to be changing, growing, evolving, shifting. Because like I say the umbrella for you is relationships, and you're in your 20s, that's going to look very different for you. Prioritizing relationships is going to look very different in your 20s than prioritizing relationships in your 50s. But if you know, generally speaking, this is the priority of my life, you're not going to put your work above your relationships. But you're going to know how to work so that it feeds the purpose of your relationships. You see what I'm saying here? You'll be able to have a job that maybe isn't coming from the depths of your soul, but you know that it pays the bills so that you can have a roof over your head for you and your spouse to live in. And so there's purpose now in that job that's not necessarily coming from the depths of your soul, but you feel purposeful going there because it's serving a purpose. Do you see what I'm saying? You have now brought purpose to that job. That job that maybe is not coming from the depths of your soul, but it's serving the purpose of giving you the life you want, where you get to prioritize your relationships. It's going to feel incredibly aligned. But if you're thinking, I'm supposed to be the most successful in this job ever, at the expense of my relationships, and you're doing that, you're always going to feel like that job is not enough. So if you're constantly feeling like what you're doing isn't enough, it doesn't align with your values, or it's too narrow. And this is the last thing I want to say, is that oftentimes we all say, okay, my purpose is supposed to be this job. So we're all running around for what's my career? What's my thing that I offer the world? And then the more we do that, and then sacrifice relationships, sacrifice our health, sacrifice pleasure and joy and fun, sacrifice adventure, sacrifice travel, sacrifice, we feel more and more empty with the career isn't filling it, because we have all these other areas of life that are part of our purpose, part of our potential, part of our passion, that aren't being fed. And then we take away those things even more because we're saying, no, I'll feel it when I have that right job. And then we focus even more on the job at the expense of the other things, and we feel even more desperate. So then we take away more things and focus more on the job, and then we feel even more desperate and empty. And you see what I'm saying? We need to understand that living a purposeful life is a holistic thing. It's every area of your life getting the proper attention. So even if your career is your thing, it doesn't mean you can neglect your health and neglect your relationships and neglect travel and feel fulfilled. You're not going to, because you're a whole person. And we need to consider that. Not everything about your purpose and your passion and your potential is going to feed the economy. That's not the point of view. You are not here to feed the economy. And if you need to cope by being on a screen all day and watching and binging at night so that you can get through your day, it's not that there's something wrong with you. It's that you're looking for your identity in a place that's never going to exist. So, what are your values? What are the things you need to start saying no to make room for the things you want to say yes to? What are the things that you're saying, when I get this perfect, I'll feel good, and realizing that's not it. We need an expansive version of life. Not everything about you is going to be about your job and making money. And if you're not a whole person giving yourself a whole life, you're never going to feel like you're on purpose. Everything should be about discovering who you are, which is not something you're ever going to arrive at, but continually growing yourself, continually expanding, continually having struggle and challenge and accepting that it's never going to be perfect. You're never going to be so aligned that no challenge ever comes. That's not what a life of purpose is. A life of purpose is one where you're constantly growing and discovering about yourself and refining what matters to you. So that is what a life of purpose is. It's all the things within the umbrella of what matters to you. Okay? So please, if you want help with this, join my mystery school. I have lots of tools in there, my YouTube channel, all that. And this is about you discovering what matters to you. What matters to you, so you can eliminate the things that don't, and understand that you're going to work through conditioning to be able to do that. And then making a whole life for yourself. Mind, body, soul, it's not just one thing. Don't get so micro-focused. Purpose and passion is a lifestyle. So don't get lazy. Don't get too working. It's what matters to you. Focus on what matters to you. Okay? So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And I'll see you in the next live. Mwah.